Hello, chefs, and good evening. We are back again for another episode of the Jedi Chef Meets the Dragon Warrior Chef podcast. I am Noreen, the budding Phoenix chef here with the Dragon Warrior himself, Chef German Lamb, and the young Jedi chef, Isaiah Gerard. You are listening to a unique podcast where we discuss tough yet real topics that need to be heard in the industry. As always, you will hear the truth, real, raw, and unfiltered. Today, have the honor of chatting with the amazing Chef Lynne Giglotti. Chef
Hi
Giglotti,
there.
Chef G, is currently a culinary instructor at the Culinary Institute of America with an astonishing background in the food industry, and we have invited her here today to get real about navigating male-dominated industries as a woman for our episode, A Woman's Reign in the Kitchen. I'm excited to be a guest host this evening and want to jump right in and let Chef G introduce herself. Chef G, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Would you give us a little introduction about who you are and your experience in the industry?
I sure would. It might take all day, but I started in the industry when I was about 17. Couldn't figure out what to do with myself. My mother was beside herself. She talked me into, I actually, you know what? I saw an episode on a Sunday news show about the CIA. And I called my mother and I said, I saw this school on TV. It looks really interesting. And she was so excited. She just went out of her way to find me a place to go to school. But the CIA at the age of 17, I just was not confident at all that I was going to put myself in a school of that caliber or that size. So she found me a small school in Philadelphia called the Restaurant School. And we had, I was in the second class that they ever had. So I went there, had a great education for certificate for a year. I met a bunch of really wonderful people that sort of like mentored me into the industry in a very gentle and kind and funny way. And then I worked in Philadelphia for 10 years. Sort of recommitted myself to the industry by enrolling at the CIA. I had several friends that were enrolling. I went up and took a culinary baking boot camp and loved it. And I decided I had grown up enough and I was ready to go. So at the age of 26, I enrolled and graduated at 28. Did my externship in Atlanta at the Ritz-Carlton. And then I moved back to Atlanta after I graduated and opened my own business. So I had a catering business for 10 years. I had a restaurant for 5 years and came back up to Hyde Park to teach in 2003. So that's the short version.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chef. So as we go through school, work, and social issues, family responsibilities, we face many challenges. Sometimes we triumph over our difficulties, other times we learn through our mistakes. It's important to take these lessons through our lives as we inevitably will face more challenges, but we can also learn lessons from those around us. So, Chef G, would you describe a cooking failure or success and why that was so memorable for you?
Well, I've had a lot of cooking failures. I think I've I've learned a lot more from my cooking failures than I have from my successes. But I think right out of school, this was a success and a failure. Right out of school, at the age of 18, I had met somebody at the restaurant school that was working in the kitchen, and I talked him into hiring me in his brand new restaurant with no experience as his sous chef. And the guy that I was dating at the time was a little bit older than me, and he had been hired as the chef. And somehow I bamboozled these two into hiring me as the sous chef. Well, I think that they knew I had a great work ethic, first of all. So I think, if they'd worked with me for a year and they knew that I was energetic and enthusiastic and certainly not lazy, and I landed the job, and it was a success and a failure at the same time, because I was in over my head, for certain, in over my head, but I also did a darn good job. one of the lessons I learned, but apparently not well enough, is that you do not go to work with your spouse. And so that didn't work out too well. And at the end of 2 years, one of us had to go. And obviously, that was going to be me. So, he went on to become a very successful restaurateur in the Cleveland area, and is still in the business. But I learned a lot during the first 2 years. A lot. I got beat up pretty well, but I learned a lot, and it was a good experience, and it was just an awful experience at the same time. So I call that my success/failure.
Okay, awesome. Chef Lamb and Isaiah, would you describe a cooking success or failure that you experienced and why that was memorable for you as well?
Well, Chef Lamb, do you want me to, I guess I'll jump in.
Yes.
So definitely so many failures, but I believe that these failures have definitely led to my success in multiple kitchens in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes when you fail, it's like one of the greatest learning lessons. One of the biggest ones I could think of is I was actually in Napa Valley working at Bouchon. And Bouchon is a very intense kitchen, Michelin star, everything has to be perfect. And I was new to that. So there was a time during service when I was on Oyster Bar, and I had 2 tickets for lobster, and we had ran out of lobster for the night. So that was definitely a very, very important learning lesson. It taught me that I had to go into work, be prepared, have a list, make sure all my mise en place is ready, ask questions, and that one mistake, it kind of startled me, and it just taught me that, okay, from now on out, I'm gonna make sure I come into work mentally prepared, and I'm gonna make sure I ask the questions I need to ask. I'm gonna make sure if I need help, I ask for help. Because I feel like if you try to put it all on yourself and you're afraid to, ask the chef for help, but you're afraid you think you got it all handled, it could, the night could kind of crumble, and it could lead to other and bigger mistakes that might disrupt service. So I think that was one of the biggest learning lessons that I had is don't be afraid to ask questions, and make sure you think ahead, especially when you enter in the kitchen. When you go into the day, every day is different. And you want to make sure you're thinking ahead and always have a plan of action in case something does go wrong. How are you going to fix it? And it was one of those things where I was doing things where I knew I shouldn't be doing, like, putting onions on a cutting board where fish was, stuff that a big no-no, but it was because I was so startled and so in the moment. I didn't have control of, my mindset. So definitely going in prepared is one of the biggest things. And you learn so much, like I said, through your failures, but it's important that when you fail, not to just fail, but go back and reflect on what you did. And kind of like at the end of the day, I talked to the chef and I was like, hey, chef, today didn't go so well. What can I do next time to do better? And I think that definitely helps. So that's probably one of my biggest failures. Chef Lamb?
Well, you know what? I'm going to chime in. Chef G mentioned the word the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and we come from the same cloth because when I graduated from Newburgh College, I was hired at the Ritz, not in the main kitchen. I was hired as in the Lion's Den, the employee cafeteria. So that right there taught me a lot about how your coworkers view you when you're in a kitchen, especially on a team, right? And there's a label. And sometimes, people get caught up with the word label. And to me, it really taught me about the system. So for me, even to this day, it hasn't changed. So one way, just because you start at ground level doesn't mean you can't be the executive chef, which I have. So, but what I have learned is it's like you're going to a grad program and you're getting an MBA, PhD, and a doctorate of how people really are. And they're not nice. They're not mean, but I would say they're insecure. So the insecurity of humans, I saw that right away. And I was like, damn, you went to, Johnson Whale, you went to CIA and you're insecure. And it really taught me about brand name is just a billboard. Now you know the person inside you. So for me, I learned stuff that I was like, wow, you know, you're treating me like this because I started at the cafeteria, but I'm making your lunch and I'm making your dinner for you, you know, my colleagues. But so to me, it taught me about how people are. And I look at cooking. Cooking is the easiest thing because you find a great mentor, they're going to teach you good etiquette, right technique, right preparation, right approach of how to do things. You meet someone, they're not going to do that. So it's very funny that not everyone is equal for whatever reason, because in cooking, it's about how the food tastes. Does it taste with love? Or if it doesn't, it goes in the trash. So you can't BS it. But then you get to know about yourself, but then you get to know about your coworkers. That is probably the most important thing. It's like, don't judge a book by its cover, but you actually sensing it. So to me, you know, that gave me a lot of insight as I, you know, started.
Awesome.
That's good. Good
Yeah,
insight.
very good insight. I love how each of you talked like in a different perspective almost about your experiences, but they all had to do with other people, like you were saying, Chef Lamb, that are around you. And yeah, so through these failures and successes, sounds like we have learned what we need to do to set ourselves up for future success. Working in our industry, in the food industry, can come with a lot of pressure, long days that sometimes move at lightning speed. Every professional has their own mise en place set up and favorite tools to stay organized and focused through busy chaos service. We may arm ourselves with a go-to chef's knife, a favorite spatula, my favorite Sharpie, but we also have other tools that we use to calm our minds through the rush. When we have 2 orders of lobster and we don't have any lobster left, and still work to push out those beautiful plates when we're in the weeds. So would like to ask, what tools do you all employ to keep you cool, calm, and collected under pressure in the kitchen?
Chef G.
Would you like to jump in, Chef?
Okay. Well, you know, I think my biggest tool is mental mise en place. And just anticipating, and Isaiah was touching on this. He was like, well, if something's going to go wrong, how are you going to deal with it? My mindset from way back was like, something's going to go wrong. I just have to figure out what it's going to be and when it's going to be. Just, you know, it's going to happen. What's it going to be today? And just kind of getting myself ready for that. And I've always had a fairly calm demeanor in the kitchen. But when, you know, when I was younger, it was a little bit of a struggle. It was a struggle, but I think mental mise en place is the best thing that I can. I plan ahead. I think it through, envision what's going to happen during service, during the day, interacting with my coworkers. And that's really helped me a lot throughout the years. Just the mental mise en place. Because if you got your mental mise en place together, your physical mise en place comes naturally.
I love
Yeah,
that.
definitely would have to.
Go ahead, Isaiah.
Sorry, Noreen. Go for it. Go, Noreen.
I was gonna say, just setting your mind up for success, and carry you through connecting yourself physically. That's really important. Isaiah.
Yeah. So, Chef, I was definitely, the point you touched on, mental mise en place is one of the most important things. And I think, how you said envision the dish. What I used to do is, like, some of the dishes that we had at the Greystone restaurant that I used to work at, I would close my eyes and I would just picture me putting the dish together, and that way during service it flows so much better because I already did it in my mind. So when you're physically doing it, it's so much easier. And then
Yeah.
for me, the biggest thing that helped is making a physical list. Making even though it's a burden to do, like making a timeline, it helped me greatly. And I found that the days I didn't have a timeline, the days I didn't have the prep list, things just didn't flow as well as they really should have flowed. And you know, everybody works
Yeah.
differently, but I found like definitely having a physical list and something you can look at, and then envisioning kind of what you're doing throughout the day definitely helps everything flow a lot better for sure.
Absolutely. In that first restaurant that I worked at, they taught me after service every night. We had a banquette up in the window. It was in downtown Philly. And we'd go sit up on the banquette in the window, and we would go through, we had a written prep list. And before we left the building every single night, we went through the prep list and set ourselves up for the next day. So those guys really taught me, like from the get-go, you don't leave the facility without knowing exactly what you're walking into the next day. And then also
Exactly.
anticipate the other stuff.
Exactly. And I actually had my chef, I went to the Greystone campus for a few months, and the chef over there in the restaurant, he was like, he actually used me as an example. He was like, I have this student, when he comes in without a prep list, it's a little crazy, but whenever he has his prep list, he's on point. So definitely, you know, having that prep list and being prepared is super, super important. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? I'm listening to everyone, and you know, everyone has their approach. You know, my approach is body, mind, spirit, and food. And what that means is, you know, it's like martial arts. Become water, become fluid. So it helped me understand not just at work, but when you're going to work and when you're out of work, how do you decompress? How do you remove all the stress? You could do it by, you know, eating and different types of food, then it's going to do some damage. Or, you know, you could do the, you know, the wrist motion, the 6 counts, or you could actually really learn about yourself, because in the kitchen, it's like this wave, like this ocean, you know, from banquet to volume, working on the line, you're getting orders just coming at you from a certain period of time, and you're getting bombarded, you know, whether it's a saute, the middle station, you know, the vegetable or the grill, or better yet, you have the garde manger, you have the cold, you have the banquet. So in one way, you learn a lot about time management and organization. And the best is becoming fluid, because when you go to work, you have 8 hours. That's the beauty of it. When you start off, you know, you have 8 hours to really manage your time. And sometimes you just got to go, let's go, let's have fun. You get your ass kicked, you're like, okay. You get your, you know, you get reamed at by a chef and say, what happened? And you're like, well, I did not have enough mise en place. So one way, that's the beauty of the kitchen. You know, in the kitchen, your sous chefs, are they supportive, or do they ream you out and suddenly, you know, you're like, I'm worthless? Or thank you, chef. Thank you for having my back. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll be better. So to me, that is how I handle, you know, the mental and this and the spiritual side of it.
Wonderful. While our jobs come with a fast-paced nature and sometimes immense pressure, these are not the only sources of stress in a kitchen. And we talked about the importance of decompression, like you said, Chef Lamb, and having you're mentally set before you come in and carrying through. But sometimes we come face to face with sexism, racism, and other forms of discrimination in the kitchen. Your tools can help you keep calm and collected, but sometimes we employ other techniques or mindsets to protect our peace and keep our focus when we face those situations of discrimination. So what do you guys do, and how do you respond to things like sexism, racism, and other types of discrimination?
Well, I mean, growing up in restaurants in the 70s, it was a free-for-all. And I think I had a pretty sheltered upbringing, fortunately for me, but maybe unfortunately, when I got into the restaurant business, the first 2 years that I was in the business, I really didn't experience any kind of, they thought I was a little young, so I did experience that kind of discrimination, but I didn't experience too much discrimination because my cooking teachers at the restaurant school, the chef at the restaurant school, the owner of the restaurant that I went to work at were all gay men. And they protected me. They treated me with a lot of respect and they protected me. And let me tell you, when I left that restaurant, I had a very rude awakening at the next job that I was at because I was discriminated against in all sorts of ways that I had never experienced before and never imagined before. I mean, it was an eye opener, some kid that was, why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? Why are you acting like this? I had to get a hard shell and quickly. So yeah, I malted and my shell grew really quickly. Just for self-protection. So I learned different coping methods. My first coping method was to just be really blunt. Get away from me, don't touch me, or I'm going to expletive. I was not tactful. And I grew up with brothers and it's the smallest of the three, was used to getting beaten up a little bit, so I had a little bit of a fighting nature. And but when I encountered people that I knew were actually truly threatening to me, I dug deep. What should I do? Oh, okay, I know. This is like the time my brother threw the block at my head and hit me in the head, except magnified. So I might not have been the most tactful, but I protected myself. And over the years, I became fiercely protective of other people that were being discriminated against and sexually harassed. And I just really never understood why people acted like that. Just narrow-minded ignorance, I guess. I don't know. I guess I still don't understand why people act like that.
Isaiah?
Yeah, definitely. So I haven't personally experienced any racism or anything in the kitchen personally, but definitely age. I've always been the youngest one in the kitchen. Like I started
Yeah.
at 15. So at 15 I was in the kitchen, and you could be definitely underestimated when you're that young. Not as many people trust you, people will try to get over on you. They'll try to so many things. So I think age is definitely one of the biggest things that I guess I've faced in the kitchen of a disadvantage, but it's also, I believe, to turn it on the other side can be an advantage when you're one of the youngest, because people, if you work for the proper chefs, they could see that at such a young age, if you have a passion for it, they'll take you kind of under their wing and they'll guide you and mentor you. And I think the chef more so will be the one to mentor you, but it's more of you face the discrimination with the cooks, the other, because they're not jealous in a way, but they're like, how does this young kid get in here? I've been here for years, kind of. They want you to do it their way, and then they'll show you the shortcuts, and then to get you in trouble, and then it'll come back to hurt you and bite you. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I faced is not so much racism or anything, but mainly just being so young, always being the youngest one in the kitchen and the youngest one in the positions I've been in is definitely probably the most difficult thing that I faced. But it definitely taught me a lot and it pushed me. And I think putting myself in that uncomfortable position helped me to, get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is super important as a chef. You never want to get comfortable or complacent. So definitely super, super important.
And I can relate to that because of my young age when I started. And, I remember the first day at the restaurant school, the instructors were talking to us. And as they stared me down, they said, most of you won't even be in this business in a year. And they were all looking directly at me. And well, hey, over 45 years later, I'm still here.
Exactly.
Here and
yeah, and it could be so intimidating.
Yeah, it was, but I was like, well, I'll just show them. I will show them
Exactly.
like you did.
Exactly. Sometimes you just have to put your head down and just work and then just show them that you have it. So that's what it takes. Definitely.
Exactly.
Chef Lamb.
Exactly.
Well, you know what? I'm listening to this, and especially what Noreen mentioned, and think about right now, when 2024, everything that you just talked on, every point still exists. You can't delete it, you can't sanitize it. In one way, it's like part of the jungle. But the best thing you could do is, how do you condition yourself knowing that, it's like Chef G, earlier, listening to her, and someone said to her about her presence. I said, well, hey, that's my guy, Bruce Lee, man. You got to have the AKA Dragon Warrior on. And that's something that, it's about self-improvement. And that's what body, mind, spirit, and food. Because before you go to work, once you put on this white jacket on, how are you going to present yourself? Are you going to present yourself like a Chef Boyardee? Are you going to present yourself like an athlete? Or are you going to present yourself with someone who has that confidence? So in one way, it's like me when I started as the cafeteria cook, Lions Den. I put it on. I was proud because I wore the white jacket, and the white jacket tells a story. So in one way, is you're the storyteller in this right here. And usually what happened was it made me a better manager, because I realized, oh my God, there are a lot of problems with people, not just on the resume, but suddenly when they're in a group and environment culture, suddenly they don't know how to behave. And all you got to do to them is rehab them. You know what I mean? And it's like the love. And once you kind of say, hey, you know what? I know, but it's going to get you in trouble. That means what happens? Termination. You get, this on your record, and, I don't want to suddenly give you a referral that you got terminated because of this. So I'm like, okay, cut the shit. This is what you need to do. So one way, I'm working at the Ritz was, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and
gentlemen.
Always use that as an example and as a joke, meaning a lady to a guy is ladies and gentlemen. A lady to a lady is ladies. And right there and then, everyone's cool. So to me, it's like you have to know how to tell that story when someone, for whatever reason, like, I know I'm Asian, dude, but I'm sorry. I didn't want to be Asian, okay? I want to be Italian, all right? So please, maybe another life, okay?
Oh, I love that. I love that. And
when you prove yourself, you prove yourself. And Chef Lamb proved himself, and Isaiah's proven himself, and I proved myself, and here we are.
yes, I love Chef Lamb when you said cut the shit, because I think I've probably said that a million times to groups of men that I've worked with, primarily in the fire department. I think that's where I faced tension between myself and my male colleagues. Like Chef G said, you grow a thick skin, and you molt, and you move through, and you learn to adapt. So we could talk all day about how hard it is, and the difficulties we face in male-dominated workplaces. But there are also positive experiences that we women have while working with a lot of men. So I'm going to pivot the previous question a little bit and shine a light on the other side of the coin. So Chef G, would you tell me what do you love about being a woman in a male-dominated workplace? And how do you think that experience has shaped who you are today?
I've kind of never really thought of myself as being different from the guys. I was always a little bit of a tomboy when I was younger. 2 older brothers, and I generally just really like working with men. I was used to being around men. Our house was mostly guys, and my parents had a lot of, they were musicians, and they had a lot of students. There were a lot of male students in the house. And, so to me, it was just like, oh, okay, I'm one of the boys. I generally really enjoy men's company. So for me, working with them, past and currently, has always been a pleasure. They think a little bit differently than we do, but I do believe a good mix in the kitchen is good. a nice combination of some testosterone and some estrogen, not a little too much of one, a little too much of the other, but a good combination. But I've had a tendency my entire life to think more like men do, so it's never really fazed me. I always felt more comfortable around the boys than the girls. So for me personally, it just seemed natural, except when somebody would step out of line, and then I just didn't understand that. So but most of the guys were great, really a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Now I'd like to hear from the Dragon Warrior Chef and the Young Jedi Chef about their experiences on the other side. Chef Lamb and Isaiah, what's something that you value and enjoy about working with women?
I would say there's so much. I actually worked for a female executive chef at a country club I used to work for, and I guess just to start it off, like women are nurturers and like they, mothers, and that's kind of where the best, in my opinion, the best cooking comes from is, my mom that home cooked. And so that's kind of like having a female's presence in the kitchen almost reminds me of almost having your mom in the kitchen. It's, you have that person you could go to, and you could talk to not only about the kitchen stuff, but about personal stuff and, just life in general. So I think just having that presence is so powerful. And they also bring such a organized structure to the kitchen. Almost like Chef Lamb mentioned, Noreen, like you're very smart. Women are very, smart, and so that they offer that as well, and just bring so much value to it. Offer a different perspective, and kind of put their twist on it. And the female chef that I worked for, she was very how do you say it? Not stern, but she was very like kind of, she had to assert her dominance in a way, because like even me, like sometimes I would tend to go to the male chef to ask him about certain things in the kitchen. Even though she was the executive chef, I would go to the sous chef, and a lot of other people would go to the sous chef. And I actually heard her over speaking to a manager. She was like, yeah, like I don't even feel like I'm the executive chef, because everybody just goes to the sous chef because she's a female. So I think seeing her resilience and seeing how she was still able to like maintain control and still able to assert her dominance in that way, I think it was very powerful. And we still have a connection. I've had her on a few of the podcasts, so definitely just seeing that how resilient that she could be is definitely powerful, I think.
And that's a great point that you make too, because when you're an executive chef in a kitchen and somebody's not really necessarily deferring to you as the executive chef, it can be really hurtful, but you have to kind of hide that, and you can't act out. I mean, I had somebody in my own restaurant, I owned the restaurant, and I had somebody ask me if I worked for my partner, how long I had worked for him, because they just assumed that I was one of his employees because he was the guy, so he must be the owner. So I just kind of laughed it off and said, oh, geez, I've been working for him forever. just just giggled and walked back in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the best thing to do. That's just, it's horrible, but yeah, a lot of people, they overlook it, and just being able to hold that resilience and be strong with it is definitely super, super important. Yeah.
Sense of humor will get you through a lot.
Sense of humor for sure. Laugh it off.
Exactly.
For sure. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? When it comes to female, I look at it as the yin and yang. You have the caveman, which the guy's a caveman, and the female, they're like a ballerina. They're finesse. They're just so delicate, but they're also an assassin warrior in the kitchen, and they have that presence. So to me, it's amazing what I learned from female chef: time management, detail, sanitation, the professionalism of how they present themselves in a kitchen with, when there's guys. So one way it taught me like how they approach each scenario. But then when they cook, oh my God, the love, of what my mom makes. Every meal she would make, it would be like full of love. I was like, damn, most guys in the kitchen can't do that. Inconsistent, right? So I realized what is the secret to be consistent? And if you look at females, think about what Isaiah said, mother, we nurture, female, we nurture. Guys, you know, that's kind of challenging. But is it possible? Absolutely. So that's where, you know, the yin and yang right there, the female and the male chef, they're one. They're not separated. They're one. And if they understand that, they cook food that people are going to cry and go, oh my God, I want some more of that. But then for you to learn how to make it, that's a story.
That's awesome. I love hearing all of your perspectives, and I love pivoting to look at the positive side. And we've all highlighted how important a diverse workplace is for so many different reasons, and everyone brings their own strengths into the kitchen. As we come to an end in the conversation, we just have about a minute and a half left. Really quickly, if you guys would just give one key piece of advice for young women working to become leaders or entrepreneurs in their careers, that would be great. Chef G, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Sure. I would just advise, as I do my young women in my class, that you are just as good, you are just as smart, you are just as talented, you're just as fast. There's no difference between you and the guys. You're all the same. You're all starting on an equal playing field, but the person that cooks with organization and real emotion is going to be the one who ends up being a great chef. Organization, but emotional cooking. If you taste something and you say, I love this, chances are I'm going to say it too. Chances are your public's going to say it as well. So you have to be organized and you have to be professional, but you also have to have some emotion to cook, I think. So that's what I would say too. And I would say that to all of my students, male and female, actually.
Isaiah, do you have something?
I'm sorry. I would say definitely stay resilient and be confident. Confidence is definitely key. Even if you you might be scared, stay confident and stay resilient for sure.
Chef Lamb, really quickly, just 30 seconds left.
Sign up for martial arts, so this way you understand the body, mind, spirit in the kitchen. That right there is the key essence right there. Everything else will fall in place.
Amazing. Thank you all for your insight and time today. This has been so powerful. Thank you all for listening. Share this with your loved ones, with your friends, and see you all next time on the Jedi Chef Meets the Dragon Warrior Chef podcast.
Thanks so much.